Welcome to WHRO's Weekly Edition. I'm Jordan Christie.
And I'm Barry Graham.
We highlight the week's news and stories happening all over Hampton Roads. We have a fresh slate of stories as we round out January. In this week's program, Virginia's opioid crisis had always been framed as an isolated problem with the state's southwestern rural white region. Now, new data shows large cities and Black communities were also impacted.
Hampton Roads officials are building sensors to measure roadway flooding in the area.
So we'll put a sensor along this waterway, and then we can calculate when the water is high enough that it will be on the road.
And the Trump administration is calling for the Navy to build battleships, something it hasn't done since World War II. It's WHRO's Weekly Edition. For years, Virginia's opioid crisis was framed as a rural white problem in the state's southwest. But WHRO's I-Ching Wang says new data shows large cities and Black communities were also hit hard.
A study from Virginia Commonwealth University and the state's health department shows opioid-related harm cost Western Virginia's Bass County $1,600 per resident in 2023. In the same period, opioid impacts in Portsmouth cost $1,800. Derek Chapman is the director of VCU's Center for Society and Health. He says expanded prevention efforts, including naloxone access and community-based programs, are making a difference.
Between 2023 and 2024, opioid deaths decreased by 48%. It's almost half the number of deaths. So those prevention techniques that we talked about are working.
The study shows opioid care could help prevent nearly 70% of overdose deaths and save Virginia communities $5.2 billion. I-Ching Wang, WHRO News.
Weather affected an annual festival celebrating wildlife in our region, but there's still more to do and see. WHRO's John Doucette fills us in on this year's events.
Over the past 16 years, the Winter Wildlife Festival has grown to more than a week of programs, events, and activities. It's based in Virginia Beach, but it stars wildlife throughout the region. 1,500 people attended a kickoff at Princess Anne Area Recreation Center over the weekend. Talks by author Joan Strassman and illustrator Natalia Rojas are rescheduled for February. Other events, including a photography contest, continue this week. Festival coordinator Katie Webb says it spotlights a special time of year.
Virginia Beach and Hampton Roads is actually a place you can see a good amount of wildlife in the winter because we're part of the Atlantic Flyway for birds and the Atlantic Travelway for whales and seals.
Information is available in the festival Facebook group or online at winterwildlifevb.com. John Doucette, WHRO News.
Norfolk recently received more money from the state for its massive floodwall project with the Army Corps. WHRO's Catherine Hafner has more on what that funding will enable.
The $25 million grant comes from Virginia's Community Flood Preparedness Fund. The money will largely be used to help homeowners in flood-prone areas. The city identified almost 1,000 properties eligible for home elevation or basement filling to reduce flood risk. Norfolk Resilience Officer Kyle Spencer says they're starting in Willoughby Spit.
What we're hoping to do is target these first 62 homes and reach out to them starting in February with door-to-door knocking to see if they're interested in the volunteer program.
The grant will also help pay for parts of the downtown floodwall and surrounding infrastructure. Virginia has now given the city about $86 million for the project. Norfolk's hoping the state eventually chips in another roughly $370 million. Catherine Hafner, WHRO News.
Norfolk's pagoda, with its gardens and koi pond, is a unique site. It's also become a revolving door of businesses that can't seem to stay open. WHRO's Toby Cox spoke to one ice cream store owner who recently closed up shop.
When Matt Henry opened Pagoda Ice Cream last summer, he says community members warned him.
They would all say something to this effect. Your idea is great. Restaurants haven't worked, but don't let her run you off.
He says they were talking about Madeline Sly, president of the nonprofit that manages the pagoda. The two butted heads immediately. Henry says Sly was coming by twice daily to check up on him. He wasn't even allowed to change decor or move furniture. He shut down the ice cream shop after just 6 months. Sly led the effort to restore the pagoda in 1998 and has been at its helm ever since.
I have very high standards for people who want to come here at the pagoda. I feel a responsibility for the pagoda.
Former business tenants say her restrictions made running anything there impossible. Toby Cox, WHRO News.
Amid deportations, visa processing freezes, and the forthcoming trial of an Afghan refugee suspected of shooting 2 National Guard soldiers, an Afghan man living in Central Virginia reflects on his time helping U.S. Special Forces and where his allegiances lie. Christine Cuter spoke with him for WVTF.
These days, Salih Wafa keeps his U.S. passport in his pocket. He doesn't mind.
I used to stop people when I was in the military. I used to stop people, check them, and ask them if they were militants, if they had any ties with the militants. We used to detain people. I don't mind if somebody's stopping me just to make sure everyone around us is safe, especially the things that happen in D.C.
Nearly 2 months after the shooting that left 1 National Guard service member dead and another severely wounded, the suspect, Ramanullah Lakimwal, goes on trial this spring. With the government's recent freeze on visa processing from 75 nations, including Afghanistan, some immigrants are bracing for backlash not seen since September the 11th, 2001. Not Wafa, though. As a cultural advisor and translator for the American military, he knows where his allegiance lies.
After graduating high school, I joined the U.S. military. I don't know other world. We were the bridge between Afghans and U.S. over there. It's very big job, plus putting yourself in danger. Not like a couple percent danger. It's like 100% danger. That's why I have a lot of respect toward the military families.
Born in rural East Afghanistan, Wafa, now 33, was fluent in English and a 19-year-old newlywed when he started working with the U.S. Special Forces in Afghanistan. He appreciated its sense of equality and belonging, sometimes in stark contrast with the Afghan army.
I would see with my eyes that a U.S. general will go and sit among his soldiers, eat the same food that his soldiers were eating, wear the same type of uniform and shoes from toe to head, same thing.
But the work was hard. During his service, he survived 3 roadside bombings and 2 suicide bombers. The dismembered remains of his father-in-law, murdered by the Taliban, were mailed to his house. Close friends in the American and Afghan militaries died in his lap. He was also repeatedly loyalty tested.
Even though I was with the military, wearing same uniform, same gun, fighting with the same enemy, going out, sitting in the same truck, enemy is shooting at us, we are shooting back. Every 6 months, they will do a polygraph test. They will make sure that we are not bad people and we can be still trusted.
Today, Wafa works in IT at UVA. He and his wife, Zainab, who he calls Z, and their 4 children chat regularly via WhatsApp with family members back in Afghanistan, but they don't expect to ever see them again in person. The Wafas rely on new friends for support, including, among others, retired Air Force Colonel Dan Moy.
Immigrants like Salih and his family who've come to the United States, he earned it. He earned it because those Afghans who were courageous enough to support what we were doing, U.S. military service members, what we were doing, they served alongside of us, shoulder to shoulder. They stuck their necks out. And I will tell you, I would not be here today if it wasn't for those Afghans who did that.
Wafa, now a U.S. citizen, doesn't linger on the threats he's received, including one neighbor's promise to call ICE. He says he wants what every American wants, and to be on the right side of history.
I do not have regrets because serving humanity is no regret. As a Muslim, I believe in that. I was in the right area. I was doing the right thing. I was not only fighting for U.S. I was also helping kids. I was helping women. When I was wearing that uniform and I was going up and down in those mountains and my chest was as an armor in front of those bullets that were coming from the enemy side. So I do not have any regret.
Reporting from Charlottesville, I'm Christine Cuter.
Still ahead on Weekly Edition, a new fleet of trucks is hauling cargo in Hampton Roads as part of an effort to reduce climate pollution. But first, a ruling by a judge in Tazewell County is complicating Virginia Democrats' efforts to draw new congressional districts this year. VPM News' Chad Khalil reports.
Circuit Court Judge Jack Hurley ruled in favor of Republican challenges to the redistricting effort on Tuesday. He said that Democrats strayed from legal and legislative processes. The conflict stems from how Virginia changes its constitution. First, the legislature needs to pass text of a constitutional amendment before an election of the House of Delegates, then again with the same text after that election. Hurley said that since Democrats passed it after early voting was underway in 2025, they would need to pass it again after the 2027 election. Republicans called it a decisive victory. Democrats said it was an attempt to sow confusion and they would press on. Earlier on Tuesday, the Virginia Senate passed a bill setting an amendment vote on April 21st. Voters also need to approve the amendment. Virginia is one of a few states with Democrats in charge, meaning they're one of the only states that can help counter an attempt by President Donald Trump to draw Republican-friendly districts before the 2026 midterms. Jad Khalil, VPM News.
Governor Abigail Spanberger previously said she'd sign legislation setting up Virginia's adult-use cannabis marketplace.
But a range of shifting interests will affect how legal sales roll out in the Commonwealth.
Dave Cantor has more for partner station WVTF.
After the state approved medicinal sales in 2021, broader adult-use access was repeatedly denied by former Governor Glenn Youngkin. Delegate Paul Krzyk, a Fairfax Democrat, is carrying legislation that would create a legal scaffolding for those sales. It would also address dozens of specifics, like setting up tax rates and increasing the amount of marijuana adults can possess. Another pair of General Assembly proposals addresses expanding access for terminally ill patients, product labeling, and how marijuana is dispensed. I'm Dave Cantor.
Local officials are building a network of sensors to measure roadway flooding in Hampton Roads. WHRO's Catherine Hefner dives into the details.
Whitney Ketchmark with the Hampton Roads Planning District Commission is standing along a notoriously floody section of Llewellyn Avenue in Norfolk. She points to the adjoining creek.
So we'll put a sensor along this waterway, and then we can calculate when the water is high enough that it will be on the road.
The Planning Commission is leading a project to place 45 sensors across 15 Hampton Roads localities. Ketchmark says officials want to help validate predictions of where flooding could happen.
We would have so much more information to make decisions. Everything from whether or not you want to go do an errand on a given day, go that way versus this other way. And then on the big picture, what roads do you want to fix first?
Anyone will be able to see real-time flooding data through an online dashboard or navigation apps like Waze. Catherine Hafner, WHRO News.
Former Norfolk Delegate Jay Jones is a little more than a week into his position as Virginia's newly inaugurated Attorney General.
Jones spoke with Billy Shields from partner station VPM about priorities and his place in history as Virginia's first black Attorney General.
Well, the weight of this responsibility is not lost on me as the first black Attorney General in the 407-year history of Virginia. But what is most important right now is to get to work for the people of Virginia. They delivered a resounding message in November that they will not stand for federal overreach, that they want to put Virginia first. And I'm excited to get to work with the team of talented individuals who we've assembled, who are ready to make this office the best in the country, to make sure that we are returning money to folks' pockets, defending from federal overreach, and using this office in a way that it should be, that it hasn't for the last 4 years.
What do the first 100 days in office look like for you?
Well, we are going to join lawsuits in conjunction with some other states to protect Virginia's interests and our values and our resources, protecting those federal employees who were laid off en masse in 2025, to make sure that we protect our education funding, and to make sure that we make Virginia the most affordable place possible by suing to maintain the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. That, among many other things, we are looking at and assessing over the first few weeks in office to make sure that there aren't any landmines, that we know what the previous administration has gotten ourselves into that may be in opposition to the values of Virginians.
How much of your predecessor's actions do you plan on rolling back or overturning?
I think the major overarching thing that we've heard from Virginians since the election and even before is that they don't feel safe. They don't feel secure in their communities, and that is the most important job of any leader in elected office, to keep our communities safe. And as Attorney General, that's what I'll be focused on for these next 4 years. We will do a full assessment of all of the things that my predecessor has done to make sure that those are in line with what we've been talking about in terms of protecting Virginia's interests. We will do that aggressively over the first 30 days, and I look forward to getting to work to do that. I think there are obviously some very clear differences between how he operated and what we will do, but For me, at the end of the day, it's always been about protecting Virginians, not just in their communities and keeping them safe, but from the excesses and overreach of the Trump administration to make sure that we're protecting their pocketbooks. And that's the job that I was elected to do, and that's what we will do, my team and I, very, very vigorously over these next 4 years.
As Attorney General, are there lawsuits that you plan to get into or get out of?
Well, certainly we are very excited about the opportunity to join lawsuits that have already been initiated by other states across the country, because their attorneys general have been fighting for their citizens. And I think, as many people know, the Supreme Court ruled that when you are not party to a lawsuit, you don't get to share in the benefits of those remedies. And so we want to make sure we avail ourselves of those protections, especially as it relates to education funding, especially as it relates to health care, and particularly as it relates to affordability. Those are some of the lawsuits that we will seek to join immediately. And again, we'll be conducting a full review over these first 30 days about what lawsuits that we should join or initiate ourselves or take ourselves out of. I think we have to do a lot of work to make sure that the previous administration hasn't agreed to things with the federal government that have given away our rights and our freedoms here in Virginia in exchange for something that may not be in line with what the folks of Virginia are looking for. And that will be something that we'll be working really hard on, especially in the first month or two.
Put yourself in the shoes of Virginians that are hearing you for the first time speak. What is one message that you hope you could give them today that you'd hope they'd hear?
That this office has always belonged to the people of Virginia, and we ran to return it to you, and that every single day my team and I will be working to make sure that we're doing right by Virginians and doing the best we can to make sure that we're meeting the challenges that they are facing in this moment, because this is what it's all about. We heard them loud and clear over the course of the campaign, and we're looking forward to getting to work to restoring trust and to making sure that they know that we're here for them every single day, using the full weight of this office to make their lives better.
That was VPM's Billy Shields talking to Attorney General Jay Jones.
Some patients in Hampton Roads say hospital bills can be higher and harder to challenge if they don't ask for an itemized statement. WHRO's health reporter Yiqing Wang spoke with one woman who has disputed her bill for multiple years.
Katie Caddy has spent more than 2 years disputing her labor and delivery bill. She says the original bill showed a single charge of more than $2,400. After she asked for an itemized bill, Caddy says she found charges for care she never received, including a second epidural. The hospital later reduced the bill by more than $700. But while she was on a payment plan, the balance increased again and her account was sent to collections.
I don't understand how or why they were able to go back to this higher amount. It just feels like the system saw the higher amount and was like, that's it. We're going to just go with that.
Health experts say patients need faster access to itemized bills and stricter rules around collections. Yiqing Wang, WHRO News.
A new fleet of electric trucks is hauling cargo in Hampton Roads. WHRO's Catherine Hafner reports it's part of an initiative to cut climate pollution in heavy-duty businesses.
NFI, a company that does supply chain logistics, bought 10 electric trucks with funding from Meta, which owns Facebook. Alexa Branco with NFI says Meta was looking for ways to cut climate pollution in heavy-duty industries to meet its net zero goals.
They paid for the transition from diesel to electric. They claim that emission benefit.
Dominion Energy helped with infrastructure to support electric chargers at a warehouse in Chesapeake. This week, NFI truck driver Mohammed Jamni demonstrated his new way of filling up, plugging an electric cable just under the cab. He says he enjoys the quieter engine while making rounds to the port. Plus,
you don't have to deal with the gas station no more.
Officials expect the electric fleet to prevent about 5,000 metric tons of greenhouse gas emissions in the next 6 years. Catherine Hafner, WHRO News.
As President Trump has unveiled his plans to remake the military, he's calling for the Navy to do something it hasn't done since World War II: build new battleships.
The last of the massive vessels was retired decades ago in favor of smaller, more versatile ships, and experts are skeptical of the plan to build new ones.
From Norfolk, WHRO's Steve Walsh reports for the American Homefront Project.
One of America's last battleships, USS Wisconsin, is moored on the Elizabeth River in Norfolk. A floating museum, its most recent battle was winning the Great Christmas Light fight this past holiday season.
This is the main bridge of the pilot house. This structure right here is something very unique to a World War II battleship.
David Woods is one of the tour guides. A retired warrant officer, Woods spent 30 years in naval aviation, often working on aircraft carriers.
A little stipulation we have with the Navy, there are certain things we can't do to the ship as a museum because they have to be able to take the ship back and undo everything we did within like 2 or 3 weeks.
USS Wisconsin came into service in 1944. It was revived briefly during the Reagan defense buildup in the 1980s, then decommissioned again in the early 1990s after its 16-inch guns were used for shore bombardment in the First Gulf War. Its nearly 13-inch steel hull is thick enough to withstand a modern Tomahawk cruise missile, but running it would cost nearly $1 million a day in just fuel. The ship would require a complete retrofit, and it's probably no longer the ship the Navy needs, Woods says.
Trust me, I wish we could have these things operational. I would volunteer to come out of a retirement in a heartbeat to serve on one of them. But in modern warfare, feasibility-wise, they're just obsolete, unfortunately.
Woods is skeptical of the Trump administration's plan to revive battleships and build 20 to 25 new ones.
Just the size, the complexity. Today's ships have to be multifunction. Good way to describe like the difference between a battleship and a destroyer. A battleship is a Bowie knife. A destroyer is a Swiss Army knife. It can do anti-surface, anti-air, anti-submarine.
The Navy had been planning for a new, more powerful destroyer before President Trump made battleships the center of what he's calling the Golden Fleet. The destroyer is now on hold as Chief of Naval Operations Admiral Daryl Cottle embraced battleships in a speech in January.
The battleship will anchor maritime fires and sea control in the most contested environments, massing durable combat power and absorbing punishment an adversary cannot match.
The Congressional Budget Office estimates that the first ship could cost as much as $22 billion. Follow-ups could still be between $10 to $15 billion. The design concept of the new ship that was unveiled at the president's press conference at Mar-a-Lago has been pulled from the internet, but the battleship was more than double the length of the current destroyers and needed almost 3 times the crew. Brian Clark with the Hudson Institute says it's one thing to say the Navy needs a larger ship, which could launch more missiles.
It's another thing to say I need to have a laser on it, and I need to have a railgun on it, and other systems that don't exist yet and that are going to be too complex to introduce all into one platform without creating a massive increase in cost and schedule.
The Navy dropped plans for railguns, which fire metal bolts rather than shells, in 2021, when the program failed to produce a working model. The Navy has a history of stopping production after a couple of ships when delays pile up and costs get out of hand. They did that with the Zumwalt class of destroyer. The Trump administration just ended the Constellation-class frigate. A new battleship could be the costliest U-turn in Navy history.
And they end up abandoning it. Now you've got these orphan ships that have a lot of unique capabilities that will be difficult to maintain in that small scale.
Clark says Congress will still have a say in whether the ship is built. Even if they approve the plan, the U.S. won't roll out its first battleship since 1944 for at least a decade. Steve Walsh, WHRO News.
You've been listening to WHRO's Weekly Edition. We had help today from WHRO's Toby Cox, John Doucette, Catherine Hefner, Nick McNamara, Steve Walsh, and Yi-Ching Wang.
WVTF's Christine Cuter, Dave Cantor and Michael Pope, and VPM's Jod Khalil and Billy Shields. Also Connor Worley, who produced today's show.
A reminder that you can always catch full episodes on the Weekly Edition podcast feed.
You can get your news updates at WHRO.org and the WHRO Reports podcast feed.
For all of us at WHRO and WHRV, I'm Barry Graham.
And I'm Jordan Christie. Have a great weekend.